there probably is a feeling among some people out there that baseball players, they show up in spring training, you play the entire schedule. In Jeter's case, you're lucky enough to get to the postseason. But there is a ton of work that goes into that. Jeter, soon after he was drafted by the Yankees, he relocated to Tampa. He wanted to be in Tampa where the Yankees have their facilities so that he could work out in the offseason. He told me once, listen, if I'm head-to-head with another guy and yet I'm there in Tampa and I'm working out every day, I'm sending the message to the organization that, hey, this guy wants it. And then, guys, after he even became this perennial all-star, there's Derek Jeter working out next to the kid from Class A, the 21 or 22-year-old, who may never make the Yankees. What kind of example is that? Here's your best player. He's out there working out every day.
You know what I enjoyed, Jack, from the interview with Meredith? The comment that there are no excuses. If you are in the lineup and you are playing, there are no excuses. And let's think back to how many players, how many ex-teammates of mine would leak it to the media, hey, I'm not 100% today. Maybe that's why it didn't work out. Derek Jeter, and I can vouch for this being in that clubhouse, played hurt all the time, and you love to hear the excuse. No excuses. I don't want to hear it. If you're in the lineup, get the job done. And also handling the media. How many guys have we seen come through New York into that clubhouse and they struggle with the media? Derek has never had a problem.
When you were covering him for the New York Times, he was a go-to guy, right? He'd always be by his locker.
He's always by his locker. And you know what I appreciated and respected about Jeter, guys, is that you could be the most well-known reporter, some nationally known reporter who walked in to talk to Jeter, or you could be a guy from a weekly newspaper who had one shot to be at Yankee Stadium. And Jeter treated everybody the same. He would answer the questions from whoever was there. John is right. He was always by his locker. Now, some people will say, well, Jeter's answers were vanilla and this and that. But that was who Jeter was. He was going to control the message. He was always going to answer the questions, but he was going to control the way in which he answered them and the way in which his thoughts got out there.
You know what, Jack? It took pressure off of everybody else because you knew that Derek was going to be by his locker, was going to be talking to the media. So as a teammate, not that you could duck out the back door. Plenty of guys did that. But you knew that the focus would be over there, and Derek took it on his shoulders, made everybody relax with the media when that New York market could be tough.
Interesting, when Meredith wrapped up the interview, he brought up being 40, not feeling 40, and time really has flown because when you look at some of the longest tenured Yankees, you see that Derek Jeter is, in fact, the longest tenured. Now in his 20th season, it all began in 95, but for real, so to speak, in 96, when he just embraced things. And everybody has talked about this, Jack, the fact that when they saw him on the field that year, they knew that he belonged. But you told a story in talking to Stick Michael that I found interesting, that maybe there was a leash when everybody thought there wasn't going to be one.
Gene Michael was the general manager, and he said that he had to kind of help convince George Steinbrenner that Jeter was ready. He was one of Steinbrenner's advisors at the time, and he said, listen, George, give him 2 months. Give him the first 2 months of the season. Let's see where we are at the end of May. And there's been so much talk about how the Yankees went into 96 and late at the end of spring training, they almost made a change. Stick Michael said that he bought 2 months from Steinbrenner because he believed that Derek Jeter would get out there and prove himself. Of course, he has that great opening day in Cleveland, and we all know that, yes, indeed, he did prove himself.
By the way, we talked about the beginning for him, end of the 95 season, and, of course, it started for real and constant in 96. But you go back to when he was drafted, and that was in 1992. He was not the top overall pick, as a lot of Yankees fans have come to know. Nevin, Shuey, Wallace, Hammonds, and Mottola went before him. He was the 6th overall pick. And, Jack, in that draft, as he said, and you went back to his 8th grade yearbook, he always wanted to be a Yankee. He was thinking he wasn't going to be, that somebody else would draft him.
He always wanted to be a Yankee, but again, Bob, that's something he had no control over. And, of course, one of the famous stories that comes out of that draft is that the Astros, Hal Newhouser, former two-time MVP, was a scout for them. He had a great relationship with Jeter. In fact, he told Jeter that Al Kaline, in the winter months, a future Hall of Famer, would go in his garage and take 200 swings. And he said to Jeter, as a kid in Michigan, you have to follow what Al Kaline did. Well, the Astros are first on the board. Newhouser says you have to pick Derek Jeter. They don't listen to him. He falls to number 6. Newhouser ended up resigning. He said, if they're not going to listen to me, as I felt so strongly about this, then they must not value my opinion.
And that's a story that's been well documented, Jack. But what about the other 5 organizations and the other 5 scouts who were scouting the players before Derek Jeter? We've heard about the report on Jeter. He's not going to Michigan. He's going to Cooperstown. That turned out to be right. You wonder about those 5 other scouts and the reports that they sent in on Shuey and some of those other players and what they're thinking now. I mean, obviously, those players were in their region and they were highly thought of. But Derek Jeter slipping to number 6 is almost hard to imagine now.